The nature of a public art encounter often doesn't easily accommodate that intentionality. So how do you create that space while you're making a public artwork and with some integrity?
Alors, bienvenue à ce vernissage spécial et à cet entretien avec l'artiste Charles Campbell, le créateur de la première œuvre d'art du programme d'art public Célébrer la présence noire. I am proud to be here tonight to represent President Graham Carr and Professor Angélique Welke, Special Advisor to the Provost on Black Integration and Knowledges. As some of you may know, Angélique played a key role in realizing this project, notably as the former chair of the President's Task Force on Anti-Black Racism. The Honoring Black Presence at Concordia public art program has been a few years in the making, and we're thrilled to see its first installment come to life today. J'espère que vous avez eu d'ailleurs l'occasion d'admirer la magnifique œuvre exposée juste à l'extérieur du théâtre, ici dans le Hall Building. Tout d'abord, nous aimerions commencer par reconnaître que l'Université Concordia est située en territoire autochtone, lequel n'a jamais été cédé. Nous reconnaissons la nation Kanien'kehá:ka comme gardienne des terres et des eaux sur lesquelles nous nous réunissons aujourd'hui. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. This event tonight is part of Concordia's 50th anniversary celebrations, which is a time to reflect on our history and our aspirations. Alors, nous sommes réunis ici ce soir pour rendre hommage à un diplômé exceptionnel et pour célébrer le rôle transformateur de l'art public dans la création d'espaces inclusifs. Alors, to discuss this project further, it is now my pleasure to introduce Cynthia Alphonse. Cynthia is Associate Advisor at the Office of Rights and Responsibilities, former project coordinator for the President's Task Force on Anti-Black Racism, and a jury member for this project. Elle a obtenu un baccalauréat en art de l'Université Concordia en 2008, and in 2021, she completed a Master of Education at the University of Calgary. Her research focused on the impact of EDI policy development practices on the experiences of racially minoritized students in post-secondary institutions. Alors, souhaitons la bienvenue à Cynthia.
It is a privilege to be here as we unveil the first commissioned work in the Honorary Black Presence Public Art Program. Cette œuvre est également la première œuvre d'un artiste noir dans la collection d'art public de Concordia. This initiative is one of the key actions from the President's Task Force on Anti-Black Racism, which was created to confront systemic anti-Black racism at Concordia and pave the way for lasting, meaningful changes. Of the 88 recommendations presented to the university by the task force, one was for making the contributions of Black Concordians more visible across our two campuses. L'art public est un moyen puissant d'y parvenir. Public art invites reflection, sparks dialogue, and affirms that Black histories, experiences, and futures are integral to Concordia's identity. J'ai également fait partie du jury pour ce projet, ce qui a été autant un honneur qu'une responsabilité que je n'ai pas prise à la légère. As a team of 8, we were tasked with selecting an artist whose work could speak to the complexity and richness of Black life. There were 21 submissions, 3 of which were shortlisted. Charles' proposal stood out for its poetic depth and conceptual clarity. His piece, Those That Pass Through, Remain, Return, explores breath as a vessel of memory and transformation. Contributing my breath to this project was a unique experience. Through breath, I connected with the past and the future, with ancestors I have never known and descendants who have yet to be. Charles is a Concordia graduate whose work, which includes sculptures, painting, sonic installations, and performances, has been exhibited internationally. Recent exhibitions include How Many Colors Has the Sea at the Power Plant as part of the Toronto Biennial, Fragments of Epic Memory at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and The Other Side of Now at the Perez Art Museum, Miami. Charles is the recipient of the 2022 Viva Award and was recently longlisted for the 2025 Sobey Art Award. He holds an MA in Fine Art from Goldsmith College and a BFA from Concordia University. Nous sommes ravis de l'accueillir à nouveau en tant qu'artiste inaugural de ce programme. Joining Charles in conversation tonight is Dominique Fontaine. Dominique is a curator and founder of aPOSteRIORI, a nonprofit curatorial platform focused on researching, documenting, developing, producing, and fostering innovation in diverse contemporary art practices. She graduated with degrees in visual arts and arts administration from the University of Ottawa and completed the aPO curatorial program in Amsterdam. Dominique also studied museology at Université de Montréal. In 2024, she was the co-curator of the Toronto Biennial of Art, Precarious Joy. She is now a scholar in residence at Concordia University. As a jury member of Honoring Black Presence, Dominique brings deep insight into the project's goal and Charles' vision. Over to you.
Bonsoir. Thank you, Cynthia, for that introduction. Merci beaucoup. Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir,
Evening,
Charles. Yes.
Oh. Good evening. Before we get going, I just wanted to offer a libation to our ancestors. This is a little bit of Jamaican white rum. So that's just to dissolve the barrier between us and them. I also want to just take a moment to thank a couple of people before we get started. Cecilia Brackmore, who was my coordinator here, Yorick Katz, and Corvus Campbell, who helped me in invaluable ways. Also Sandra Margolian, who helped coordinate the project from the Concordia side. And then all the people whose breath I recorded. We'll get into that in a minute. But I don't know if we could stand up. They're the real heroes for me. Maybe we could, if you recorded with me. Okay, thank you.
Charles, I'm very happy to be in conversation with you today. And, you know, your works invites us to slow down and listen to breath sounds, to bird songs, to memory. It helps us to think about how art can hold space for grief, migration, and community. As the first artist in Concordia's Honoring Black Presence program, your installations, those that pass through, remain, return, offers a powerful way to reflect on Black presence, both personal and collective. So over the next 45 minutes, we'll explore the ideas behind this work, your creative process, and how it connects to your larger practice. And I would like to begin by asking you a few questions. It will last about half an hour, and I have like 3, 4, 5 sections of sets of questions for you. And then after that, we will open the discussions so that the audience can ask you, questions about your practices, and also about the installation. So let's start with your role in Concordia's Honoring Black Presence program. So you're the first artist, as it was mentioned before, that was invited to take part, and your work speaks to the past, present, and future of Black communities here. I'd love to hear you from how you approach this opportunity and what it means to you. So my first question is, what does it mean to be the inaugural artist for honoring Black presence? And how did you approach representing Black Concordians, histories here, presents, and futures?
Thank you, Dominique. So the project was quite exciting for me for a number of reasons. Firstly, because I went to Concordia. This is really where I began my journey as an artist. It's where I started to develop my political conscience, in a more concrete fashion. It led me to down the path that took me back to Jamaica to explore my identity in more concrete ways. So on a personal level, it's very rewarding to come back here at this time and kind of, present my work to in this situation. Also in the context where there was, at the time I was at Concordia, the Black presence was not very well acknowledged. And so to see that begin to shift is really exciting for me. I also have a kid that is attending Concordia, so it's been really satisfying. It's been a great excuse to travel back and forth and see my beloved child. So that's been really important. And then in terms of being the first inaugural artist, I think I have to think about this project in the context of the President's Task Force on Anti-Black Racism. I think it is an example of, trying to deal with difficult histories and trying to advance a program that actually doesn't just gloss over them, but actually looks at them in greater depth. I sincerely hope that is the case. There's sort of, as I say, there's 80 recommendations, and this is one of them. So I feel like this project should be looked at in that context, and whether those other recommendations are also being followed through on, whether there's going to be a Black Studies program here, whether, how Black students are treated, how they feel in this environment, the employment of Black faculty and staff. So I think it's really important. As important as art is, it's also important that it doesn't become something that blackwashes a university. So.
Yeah. So thank you. So my next questions are speaks about the breadth, the memory, and the community engagement. So as we know, breadth, as I know, and some of you might know, breadth is a big part of your work, especially in the Black Breadth Archive, one of the main, the source of this project. It's personal, political, and deeply connected to memory. So in this part of our conversation, I'd like to explore how breadth helps tell stories and build community. So the question I would ask you to answer is, how does this the Black Breadth archives connect with your Concordia installation? And what have you learned? Also, how does this challenge dominant narratives around Black identity and validations? And the last part of my questions is, maybe if you can remember, it's what have you learned from recording breath in one-on-one and in group settings here at Concordia? Yeah.
Thanks. So I've been working on this project called the Black Breath Archive since 2022-ish. And it started very simply as actually coming out of a performance project where I wanted to include the audible sound of breath within the context of a performance at the Vancouver Art Gallery. And so I invited some people to record with me, and I was thinking of breath in fairly generic terms at that point, but I kind of immediately became really entranced by the process of doing these recordings, how deeply intimate it was to sit opposite somebody and in these moments of silence just really listen to somebody's breath. If you think about the circumstances where that normally happens, it's with people who are really, really dear to you, either lovers or parents or, dear people passing. So the intimacy and what that enabled really entranced me, and how deeply people started to go into memory, and it became a sort of honor. It kind of started to sync with the idea of this project, in that it became honoring in itself. Just the fact, giving people the time and space to just be in their own body and breath, to connect with their own memories and family histories, or and to be kind of held and witnessed during that process. I found it was quite transformative, both to me as a witness to that project, that process, and then people who participated in it, and how it enabled them to kind of connect to a part of themselves, to a part of their memory, to their ancestors in a way that they had not previously. And so that became the core of this project, and how I saw it as honoring, and kind of back to kind of your previous idea of like how it touches on kind of past and present. It's really it's honors a kind of an embodied past, that we carry our histories with us, that it's not that kind of we are the tablet on which they are written ultimately.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I've lost the rest of your question.
What did I say? I think I asked about also so that you can speak about what you I think you answered everything that I've mentioned, and also the questions about the challenge. How this experience has challenged dominant narratives around Black identity and validation.
Yeah, so that was interesting thing. Like, people would come off the street, they'd be in this hurry, they'd be coming out of their professional lives often, where it's stress, and you kind of have to prove yourself as a Black person constantly in some way, or there has to be some mechanism which validates your presence, and sometimes it's validated by your victimhood, sometimes it's validated by your excellence, sometimes by your achievements. But there's actually very rarely do you actually get a space where you're just valid as a person in and of yourself, and you don't have to have some laurels or even a little bit of blood to show people. So it kind of, for me, it was important that there was to create these spaces where we can just be as we are, and there's not the sort of, we don't exist for others' expectations or for others' validation, that is just inherent to us, and and that is embodied in our breath. Like, just, it's here, all we have to do is breathe, and that would be the kind of my instructions for everybody. There was no way to do this, so I invited people into these sort of recording booths. I would go through a meditative kind of script with them, and there were long pauses within that script where we would just record their breath, and the instructions were, you can't do it wrong. Like, you're breathing, so you're not going to stop breathing at some point in this, I hope. And so creating that space was really, really important.
Wow, thank you. So maybe we should say that what you're seeing behind us, it's works that Charles has created over time. So it's just to give you an idea of his process, his practices. So we may speak to them or not. So it's just, yeah. Yeah, my other question, though, is about the installation itself. So your installation uses bird song to talk about migration, memory, and identity. So I find it as a beautiful way and a powerful way to connect sound with community. So I'd like us to talk about how this idea came to you and how it works in the space at Concordia here. So what inspired the uses of Caribbean and African migratory bird songs in this work, and how those bird songs stand in for breadth and individuality in the installation. So yeah, if you can explain.
So there are a couple of ways into that question. The first, maybe I'll just talk about the practicalities of the project. So initially, the idea was actually just to have audible breath in the project, and so I've done. I think there's 38 recordings of people, and I mix those into a audio soundscape. Which sounded fine in my studio, and then I played it in a hall building. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's an elevator, there's an escalator that's going up and down, there's HVAC going on, and it's all at that frequency range that's similar to breath and to white noise. And what happened is it just kind of destroyed the breath. When you can hear it clearly, there's all of these subtleties that come through that resonate with people emotionally with the breath, and because we all have a familiarity with breath. So the space needed something else, and I've been working with birdsong for a number of years, for about 10 years now in various other projects. And it seemed like the right solution. Specifically working with the idea of migratory birds that transited from mostly the Caribbean, a little bit from the African continent as well, but all birds that would at some point be resident in Quebec as well, seem to really point nicely to the movement of Black populations. And also the sort of transformative presence of Black populations. There's something that happens when you're with the auditory birdsong that changes the nature of the space, that kind of puts you in a different emotional register there. So that was the other character of it, and then there's also just this sort of beautiful diversity to the bird songs. There's like some nice little twitters and tweets. There's sort of these sort of almost otherworldly sounds that birds will make as well. And it seemed to sort of kind of open up kind of potential and possibility, and this space of diversity, this kind of foregrounding of the species that migrates as being integral to a space. It's like it moves, but their movement is also integral to how we understand the space. And I think the Black populations in this city in particular, but everywhere, have had such enormous contributions to the cultural life of the space, even like as we move through those spaces. So it's really seemed like a really apt way to do that, and then also just a way to kind of bring in this sort of this sort of beautiful, this kind of lighten the feeling of the installation as well. And
it functions very well. So Concordia's new program, public art program, the public art program and new program of honoring Black presence here, invites artists to rethink public art, not as something permanent, but as something that can be felt and experienced. And we will experience, Charles, because if you have not seen it, And let's talk about how you responded to that challenge and what new materials of ideas you've explored with your piece. So, first of all, how did you respond to the invitation to challenge permanence in public art? And what materials or formats did you experiment with that might not be considered traditional public art? And the last questions in that block is, how do you hope your work will evolve over the 3-year cycle? Yeah.
So firstly, in terms of the impermanence of the work, what I enjoyed about that prospect is that it kind of gave me permission to not try to say I was, speaking as the solo voice for a Black population, which is often the position that you're put in. You're kind of the Black representative. So I liked this idea that it was going to be, one of initially 3, and that there would be this sort of ongoing dialogue, and that I was just sort of starting the conversation in this form, but it would be carried on in different ways, because there's all kinds of things that I didn't do in here. There's really a lot of concrete histories that have taken place in Concordia and in Montreal. Montreal was a really important epicenter for kind of Black political activism in the late '60s and so on. And although I did the research on that for that information, it doesn't really appear in the work as so it kind of gave me permission to sort of say, okay, no, this is really my own moment in this space, and what do I have to contribute to this discussion here. And then the other thing, I guess in terms of materiality, I guess the most I guess it was the incorporation of sound, which isn't often incorporated into public art, but I feel is really transformative of spaces. The way it as I said, changes the emotional kind of register of a space, where it kind of can take your mind. And then how that combines with what you're seeing. I feel like that's sort of what I was playing with conceptually in the space. And then there's a kind of there's references to more traditional modes of public art. I mean, a stained glass window is a piece of public art in a way, and it has that quality as well.
Yeah. And also, we were in the space yesterday, and we were looking at the light. Maybe, I don't know if you would like to speak about that, the way it will evolve over time, but also during each day, each hour, it's something else.
Yeah, I'm really actually curious to see how it changes over the seasons, with kind of more direct sunlight on it, and how the light kind of comes into the space and how it changes the nature of the space. I feel like that will change over time. I'm not sure exactly how, over the 3-year course, something changes with familiarity of the space. I'm hoping that it becomes a kind of a comfortable space for, in general, for kind of reflection and meditation, or a kind of a space because of the kind of the bird song, because of the kind of change in the light. It kind of filters out some of maybe the city a little bit, and becomes a space of more meditative space, possibly. But I think that remains to be seen, because of the nature of the hall building. It's such a dynamic space. There's so much movement in and out of it. How much of a space you can create to kind of create a pause within that space that's a question.
Brilliant. Yeah. So thank you. As we wrap up, I'd love to hear more about your creative process. And we have examples here of your realizations. So maybe we can speak what next for you. As you know, your work is rooted in memory, spirit, and care. So I don't know, what do you hope people take away from it? And and also I would like to know, how do ancestral and spiritual connections shape your process today? And so also, are there any new materials, technologies, or themes you're excited to explore more next from this experience with this artwork this installation here in Concordia?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start with the notion of kind of ancestrals and spiritual connections. I mean, what's happened in my art practice is that that's become the space where I make those connections, and it's also become a space that I think of as impacting that realm as much, as much as the realm that we exist in physically, which is a kind of becomes a really interesting dialogue for me in terms of like, what am I actually making and what am I actually trying to cause to happen. And the piece for me that in a way most did that was the piece at the biennial, because it was kind of explicitly built on honoring the memory of lost souls and creating a space of solace, creating a space of solace for both for us in the living in the moment, but also for the spirits themselves that had never properly been grieved, and thinking of it as a communication, and thinking of ourselves as a kind of as not just in our the purity of a singular identity, but actually as an incarnation of these kind of multiple identities, these ancestries that have evolved. Like, I mean, I think everybody in this room will have multiple and often conflicting ancestries, and we are that in this moment. So, contending with the kind of the spiritual has become actually a way of also contending with my own multiple histories, and trying to start to think through those and think through what needs to be reconciled, not just for me in the present, but what wasn't reconciled in the past. And so, or wasn't, in the case of the biennial piece, wasn't grieved. And what kind of spiritual insult has that left that we still kind of contend with today? So that work continues. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to take me. The other concept that is kind of holding me a lot is various notions of time. Yes. And thinking through time as in multiple from multiple perspectives, that like with the breath pieces, for example, they're taken. So those large colored panels that you're seeing sort of behind us occasionally, and also the panels on the windows. There are some breath portraits there. Those are taken from between 1/10 and 100th of a second of breath, and taking those moments and kind of expanding them so they live as a singular ongoing moment, and then thinking through things like more, whatever. What is the time of an ancestor? What does it mean to compress the 400 years of transatlantic slavery into a soundscape that lasts 20 minutes? And what does it mean to think of geological time, the kind of how these kind of folds of the earth. You'll see some of my work kind of references kind of landscapes and so on, but not landscape as a static entity, but landscape as a moving being. It's like the landscape that we will look at a mountain and think the mountain is always there. That mountain has its own time and its own evolution. So I'm finding these are the things that kind of I'm thinking about, and how they kind of crystallize into sort of singular pieces is what kind of interests me. Yeah.
Charles, thank you for this thoughtful and generous conversation. And your work here at Concordia shows us that public art doesn't need to be permanent to be powerful. Through breath and bird songs, you've created a space that honors Black presence, not by fixing it fixing it in stone, but by letting it to move, echo, and return. So to everyone here, I hope this conversation has helps us think in new ways about art, memory, and community. Thank you very much, Charles, and congratulations again for your work here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dominique.